A meteorite crashed onto Earth. Then tens of thousands of horrible monsters came out of it. Humanity was ruthlessly slaughtered, treated like livestock. The mechas and artillery were completely ineffective against these monsters, with even nuclear bombs unable to completely eradicate them. Humans were forced to seek refuge within towering walls reaching thousands of meters high. With the appearance of a colossal monster, the formidable wall erected to resist the invasion crumbled in an instant. Countless creatures eagerly poured in, savoring nature's bountiful feast. The strongest human mecha troops could only leave insignificant bullet holes in the monsters. Even a whole mecha unit couldn't even destroy one giant monster. As more regions fell to the invaders, despair and fear gripped every heart. The luckier residents were evacuated to underground shelters to eke out survival. However, the sounds of the monsters fiercely pounding against the gate seemed to imply that their lives were on borrowed time. When the mecha unit arrived at the shelter, inside, the humans had been devoured completely, leaving only a trembling little girl hiding in a box. The mecha unit, with the sole survivor in tow, began to retreat towards the harbor, but large numbers of monsters closely followed. Humanity seemed to have lost sight of dawn as cities were devoured by the creatures. In a bid to preserve human civilization, the United Nations urgently enacted the Fire Seed Plan, transporting hundreds of thousands of humans to the Milky Way in search of a new sanctuary. Meanwhile, billions left on Earth would continue the struggle against the monsters until humanity's ultimate demise. Takuro suddenly sat up, drenched in sweat, his eyes wide with fear. He found himself in his old room, a pre-enlistment relic. The clock on the wall read October 22nd. Was everything that just happened all just a nightmare? But he vividly remembered falling in battle during that cataclysmic war. As he dressed and stepped outside, the scenes before him left him trembling in panic. Everywhere lay ruins and shattered mechas, shattering his illusions. It dawned on Takuro that he had truly been reborn, transported back 2 months in time. This time, he must stop Fire Seed Plan and eradicate all the monstrous foes. His first thought turned to his former mentor, Kazuki, the deputy commander at the Pacific Yokohama base. Takuro hastened to the base, only to be halted by the guards at the gate. Desperate, he called out, but Kazuki seemed reluctant to meet him. Takuro had no choice but to force his way in, their altercation finally grabbing Kazuki's attention. In his urgency, Takuro blurted out about the Fire Seed Plan. Upon hearing those words, Kazuki swiftly ushered Takuro inside the base. After a thorough sonic scan to verify Takuro's identity, Kazuki proceeded with the interrogation. Takuro openly admitted to his resurrection. To be precise, he had traveled to a parallel world. He lived in a world without monsters, and his school was devoid of military influence. But one morning he woke up and realized that the world had changed. The school had turned into a military base, and the classmates he once knew now felt like strangers. Most terrifyingly, this world had been engaged in a full-scale war with monsters for the past 30 years. He was also forced to join the military, and became a mecha warrior fighting against the monsters in the Fire Seed Plan, offering his insignificant life. But now, he had been reborn back into this world. 2 months later, monsters would launch their final assault. By then Earth would become a graveyard for billions. The only one who can stop this tragedy is Kazuki. If Kazuki manages to shrink the parallel processing unit of 15 billion semiconductors to palm size, the core device of Fire Seed Plan 4 will be completed. Only by achieving this technology might it be possible to prevent the initiation of Fire Seed Plan 5. Takuro, tears in his eyes, pleaded with Kazuki to save humanity. Kazuki set aside her handgun and arranged for Takuro to join Training Squad 207. Takuro returned to the familiar training grounds, where she would once again battle monsters alongside 5 beautiful women. The reborn Takuro remembered all the landing points of the monsters. If the higher-ups could be convinced that the monsters could be defeated, there might still be hope for humanity. In that case, they won't abandon billions of people to flee to the galaxy. In Takuro's memory, in 3 days' time, a massive wave of monsters would invade the base from the sea. Due to the unpreparedness of humans for this assault, tens of thousands would fall victim to the monsters. So Takuro told Kazuki everything, hoping she would deploy forces along the coast in advance to exterminate the monsters. However, Kazuki disagrees because she cannot ascertain the truth of this matter. If she deploys forces prematurely and the monsters do not arrive in 3 days, then she will bear the responsibility of abusing her authority. Takuro felt a sense of foreboding. Kazuki seemed intent on using the lives of tens of thousands to prove the truth of the situation. After all, no one would believe the absurdity of Takuro's rebirth. At this moment, Takuro was extremely anxious. He didn't want to stand by and watch hundreds of thousands of people die. He could only desperately plead with Kazuki for assistance. Eventually, Kazuki agreed to Takuro's request and promptly dispatched 2 elite units to support the coast. Soon, the third day arrived. And true to Takuro's warning, monsters indeed landed from the coast to attack the base. The mecha units that had been ambushed in advance swiftly counterattacked, eliminating all the monsters in short order. Upon hearing the good news over the broadcast, Takuro's tense nerves finally relaxed, and he excitedly rushed to find Kazuki. However, there was no joy on Kazuki's face. Unknown to Takuro, the cost of saving those tens of thousands of lives was the demise of the 2 elite units and the substantial expenditure of resources and manpower. The lives of tens of thousands and the nation's elite forces. Whose lives were more valuable? No one could provide an answer. To test the new system of the mecha, Takuro and his team of glamorous partners piloted the latest models in a showdown against other squads. Winning the exercise would mean that the newly developed system would be adopted across all mecha, significantly boosting the combat capabilities of the force. The new mecha piloted by the glamorous women demonstrated formidable prowess right from the start, with incredibly fast movement speed that made it impossible for opponents to catch. Takuro's mecha, akin to a bolt of lightning, swiftly overwhelmed the opposition with a dominating advantage. But while the beauties were basking in the joy of victory, suddenly there was a violent explosion at the drill site. Monsters unexpectedly invaded the base. Since the mechas were equipped with training simulation rounds, their attacks had no effect on the monsters whatsoever, leaving them to be devoured alive by the monsters. Witnessing the horrifying scene before them, the beautiful women were struck with panic and started to retreat in quick succession. In order to boost their courage, the commander directly injected everyone with stimulants. Following that, Takuro and his teammates were sent to retrieve live ammunition, while the rest were instructed to hold their ground here. Takuro believed that dispersing their forces at such a critical moment was perilous, and advocated waiting for the weapons to arrive before counterattacking. Unfortunately, the convoy transporting the weapons fell prey to a monster ambush, resulting in total annihilation. Takuro and his teammates could only return to the hangar to retrieve live ammunition. At this moment, several monsters emerged from the ground, blocking their path. Everyone immediately dispersed, heading towards the hangar individually. However, Takuro charged towards the monsters alone. Under the influence of the stimulants, having lost his rationality, he wildly attacked the monsters with training simulation rounds. His teammates swiftly injected Takuro with a sedative, hoping he would regain his senses quickly. But Takuro, overwhelmed by the stimulants, was deeply immersed in the frenzy. Unable to extricate himself, the monsters took turns assaulting, eventually toppling the mecha to the ground, swarming over it. Inside the cockpit of the mecha, Takuro's eyes reflected deep fear and despair. The sound of monsters gnawing on the mecha echoed clearly in his ears. The scene shifted. At this moment, all the monsters within the base were eradicated. Takuro was miraculously saved, his heart filled with despair and fear. Shivering in a corner, the beautiful instructor gently comforted Takuro with soft words, hoping he could gather himself. Suddenly, a monster appeared, biting her head off in one swift motion. Takuro watched in horror as his most respected teacher met a gruesome end before him. Takuro's heart shattered completely. At the same time, human forces mobilized all land, sea, and air resources for a counterattack, determined to destroy the monster's nest at any cost. However, as the battle commenced, the frontline units suffered heavy casualties. The colossal light ray class monsters' beams tore through the seemingly impregnable defenses of the United Nations forces. Takuro and his teammates piloted their mechas low to infiltrate the island, engaging in bloody combat with the monsters. Their mission was to carve a path for the ultimate weapon, Scenario, to safely land on the island and defeat the monsters. To evade the attacks of the light ray class monsters, the military directly airdropped the mechas onto the battlefield. The mecha unit successfully infiltrated the monster's nest, advancing towards the core. At that moment, there was a sudden vibration reaction deep underground. 40,000 monsters emerged from the ground. Half of the pioneering troops were instantly annihilated. Then tens of thousands of monsters suddenly turned around, taking the direction of Takuro and his teammate. naval warships launched artillery strikes to provide firepower support, but they were intercepted by the monsters. Subsequently, the horde advanced towards Senaro, aiming to obliterate humanity's ultimate weapon. Witnessing this, Takuro and his teammates swiftly deployed defenses, bottlenecking the monsters in the canyon to protect Senaro. In a bid to safeguard Senaro, Takuro single-handedly piloted his mecha into the midst of the monster horde. To defeat the colossal monsters, he strategically targeted their hind legs or joint areas. Faced with hundreds of monsters, Takuro was able to kill a large number of giant monsters by himself. Amidst the chaos, the glamorous women joined the battlefield to assist Takuro, carving a bloody path forward. Meanwhile, Sumika piloted the ultimate weapon, Senaro, to the attack location, prompting everyone to swiftly withdraw from the combat zone. The giant light ray class monster unleashed a barrage of laser attacks at Senaro, with the combined power of multiple high-energy lasers proving terrifying. Despite sustained attacks, Senaro emerged unscathed. Recognizing the opportune moment, Commander Kazuki immediately ordered a counterattack. Following the command, Senaro opened the chest compartment, charging the nuclear positron cannon in an instant. The destructive power of this particle cannon was cataclysmic, obliterating half of the monster's nest with a single shot. Everyone stood in awe at the scene before them, witnessing humanity's first victory over the monsters in over a century. With the ace in the hole, Senaro, humanity was poised to drive the monsters from Earth. Senaro fired another particle cannon. The particle cannon hit precisely. It crushed the monster's nest completely. However, in the next moment, Sumika unexpectedly lost consciousness and collapsed, causing Senaro to lose control and crash heavily into a mountainside. Senaro's systems refused to accept the code for a restart. Upon seeing this, Kazuki immediately issued orders for Takuro and his teammates to initiate a rescue mission. Kazuki needed to be escorted back to the base, while Senaro had to undergo explosive demolition. Just then, tens of thousands of monsters suddenly emerged from underground, charging towards Takuro and his teammates. In order to safely bring Sumika back to the base, Takuro decided to evacuate to a warship on the sea with Sumika, while Captain stayed behind to initiate the self-destruct sequence of Senaro. The monsters went berserk, launching a frenzied assault on the warship. Some of the vessels sustained severe damage. If this continued, it was feared that they wouldn't be able to hold out much longer and face the risk of total annihilation. Meanwhile, Takuro, with Sumika in tow, raced towards the warship at full throttle. Sumika suddenly regained consciousness. Something unexpected happened. The monsters stopped moving as if they were frozen in time. But when Sumika fell unconscious again, the monsters resumed their actions. Then they madly rushed towards Sumika's direction. At that moment, the number of monsters in the entire area was increasing rapidly. Takuro and his teammates broke out at full speed, but one of the girl's mecha engine is severely damaged. The speed is getting slower and slower. In order not to slow down the others, she simply abandoned the retreat. She returned to assist Captain, as the self-destruct program for Senaro had not been activated yet. Captain raced against time to decrypt the system while a massive horde of monsters approached. On the other side, Takuro and his teammates managed to break free from the encirclement and were nearing the coastline when suddenly, tens of thousands of monsters appeared ahead. Kazuki immediately ordered them to slow down, but two teammates were moving too fast to comply, careening out of control. The retreat path was completely blocked, with the monster numbers increasing steadily. Meanwhile, thousands of monsters were besieging Captain, prompting Kazuki to order her to activate Senaro's self-destruct sequence, then retreat along the coastline. But by now, a large number of monsters have already surrounded. In order to save the surrounded Captain, Kashiwagi gave up the chance to retreat. She drove the mecha alone to support Captain, but due to the number of monsters, Kashiwagi tried her best, but she couldn't break through. Her mecha was brutally dismembered by the monsters, and she was also brutally cut into pieces by the monsters. At the same time, Captain's only chance of retreat was lost. Commander Kazuki contemplated sending nearby forces to rescue Captain, but she adamantly refused. She no longer wanted to see more people die for her. As the team leader, she had long been prepared for sacrifice. Consequently, She activated Senaro-O's engine. Once this engine started, all the monsters on the island would converge towards Senaro-O. In this way, Takuro and the other teammates could safely evacuate. Captain's plan was to lure all the monsters over and then destroy them along with the entire island. At this time, Takuro safely returned to the aircraft carrier with his teammates. Sumika also received medical treatment. Meanwhile, all the monsters swarmed towards Captain. As the horde closed in for the attack, Captain unleashed Senaro-O's defensive barrier, instantly decimating a large portion of the monsters and keeping the rest at bay. Kazuki specifically established a communication line for Captain to bid farewell to her teammates. As the countdown reached its end, Captain's life also came to a close, accompanied by crimson flames blooming enchantingly. In an instant, the entire island turned into ashes. This time, humanity paid a great price, finally expelling a portion of the monsters.